it's mind blowing. Like if people don't know that, like Yngwie is actually a singer now as well, which kind of just it strikes me as odd, little weird, little blown away, little I don't know. Yngwie J. Malmsteen. What more can you say? So all right. So our guest, I could be him. Let's see. Is this the one and only my new good friend, Mr. Darren Paltrowitz?
Wow, I get to talk right after Yngwie Malmsteen discussion? Whoa.
So it's funny. Like I'm my first question I was going to ask you was, so are you not a fan of Pretty Boy Floyd?
Oh, that's quite a $1 million question right there. And must I say, it is an honor and pleasure to be speaking with you, man. Pretty Boy Floyd gets that reputation for being like the worst hair band. And I don't know, even the worst hair band is still pretty good by me.
I'm with you. I always loved Pretty Boy Floyd. Believe it or not, like it might scare some people, but like when they come to Philly, I'm still one of those 100 people in the crowd there cheering them on.
Yeah, and come on, credit goes to them for inspiring Ugly Kid Joe.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hysterical when you think about that story.
Absolutely. And then it's even funnier to think that the singer of Ugly Kid Joe was then the singer of Life of Agony for a while. When you sometimes have these people who join bands that never in a million years would you think that they'd want to do them. Like when Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day and Norah Jones did an EP together. You're like, what? Huh? Them?
Right. It's funny, like, from doing this show, like you've done many celebrity interviews over the years, and sometimes you end up becoming friendly with some of these people and maintain relationships. And one of those people for me was, or is, ex-MTV VJ Karen Duffy, and Karen used to date people like George Clooney. But before she dated George Clooney, she dated Whitfield Crane, the lead singer of Ugly Kid Joe.
Huh. You know what? It amazes me with Ugly Kid Joe that they're sort of like a one-hit wonder here, and how big, I guess two-hit if you say Cats in the Cradle, but how big they were in Europe. Like, they're not a one-hit wonder. They do big tours over there. And I'm always super intrigued by big in Japan stories and big in Europe stories, and then also finding out by the same token, like the band Bush, who probably sold like 15 million records in America, mean nothing in England.
Really?
There's just a long list of those kinds of artists that in their home turf, not so much. And then isn't Def Leppard, not at all a big deal in England?
I mean, you would think they're like saints in England.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are 100% an American kind of thing. And it had to do with having American management and that song Hello America and landing some big American tours. And then you'll find American bands that, mean very little here and then a ton in Canada. I have always loved that kind of stuff. It's not just Mr. Big. They're not the only American band that's big in Japan and then, lesser here.
It's really interesting, though, because, I mean, I have this discussion so much with musical artists who are just that. Like, years ago they were really big here, but now, like that Pretty Boy Floyd thing where they're playing clubs to 100 people, maybe 200 people. But they go over to England and or Europe, they're still like drawing like really nice, decent sized crowds. And it kind of like confuses and baffles me at the same time.
Well, you could also draw that parallel to wrestling. Do you listen to Eric Bischoff's podcast and all? And feel free to say no.
You know what? I do not.
Okay, he was talking about running into Jeff Farmer, a.k.a. NWO Sting, when he was in Japan recently, and how Jeff Farmer has had an amazing 20, 25-year career in Japan just being NWO Sting. I guess it has to do with them going, well, he's 1/10 the price of real Sting. Looks like Sting. Okay. And you have to wonder, like, how many things went down that way. I'd heard, I have no way of knowing this is true or not, but Aerosmith, like, got their really big push. No, I'm using a wrestling term. They soared to popularity. We'll say that way in
I
Japan
like that.
because the promoter went, well, it's cheaper than bringing the Stones out, in the 70s, and you have to wonder, how many ways of popularity or long-term careers happen because somebody realized, well, it's cheaper if we do this and we have our own homegrown talent.
That's true. That's really true. I never heard that story. That's a true story. I never.
The Jeff Farmer or the Stones Aerosmith one?
The Stones Aerosmith.
I remember that from an MTV or VH1 documentary at least 15, 20 years ago. I mean, no one's going to want to tell that story now because Aerosmith want to call themselves, America's most successful rock band of all time, which statistically they might be. But, there's always value in going, who's somebody that's super talented but hasn't broken yet that we could be the company behind them and then they become our superstar. So my hunch would be that's why, Mr. Big was always so big in Japan. Do you know what I'm talking about, or is this just like so far-fetched?
Oh, no, I totally know what you're talking about. Believe me, I know what you're talking about.
Good for us. Sad overall, I would say to that.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm like Richie Kotzen and anyone that ever played with Mr. Big or any Mr. Big side project is just massive in Japan, or at least, you could earn just a great living off of being a Mr. Big guy.
It's funny. I just got an email the other day. Like, I have two longtime friends from going back to high school I'm still very close with.
Uh-huh.
And we all grew up in that whole, 80s era of hair bands and music and all that, and we've played in bands together over the years. I got an email. We always have, like, these three-way emails going. And the other day, it was Richie Kotzen. There was a video of Richie Kotzen, and my buddy was just like, I never truly realized how amazing this guy was.
Yeah.
And he really is. It's one of them things, too, like, I remember back in the day. And, I think part of it, too, was, when he hooked up with Poison, but then you heard the story years later on VH1's
Behind the Music.
Behind the Music. How he screwed Ricky Rocket's wife or something, or
the fiance and whatnot.
Yeah, and it just kind of like left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, I think, and kind of like blackballed him a little bit. But he's come out of it and stood on his own, man.
Oh, man, that guy's career is so much bigger than you realize because, yeah, he did the Poison thing, whatever, fine. They had one top 40 hit, fine. Then he joined Mr. Big, which wasn't a huge deal here per se. He took over for Paul Gilbert the couple of years Paul Gilbert was out of the band. And it's like, yeah, they had, an Atlantic Records album, whatever. Overseas, huge deal. Then, what was the band he had after that? He had some band that I'm blanking on. Then his solo career super took off in Japan, like solo records that are doing really well, in that I guess they realized, like, hey, this is a guitar hero that we can afford that's ours as much as we want. Then he formed the Winery Dogs, with Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big and Mike Portnoy. And now he's one of those guys that, he goes between solo, the Winery Dogs, this all-star thing, that one. And I think that he is the total package. You got a guy who can shred, but tastefully. Like, he could tone it down. He could do the blues thing when he wants. He can sing. He could do the power pop thing. He looks cool. He's well-spoken. And super famous in some circles. And then I think the average person walking down the street said, hey, you ever heard of Richie Kotzen? Who? They don't know who he is, but he sold millions of records.
It's crazy. Now let me ask you this, because this is what I said to my buddies in that email, and this is something I felt like if Soundgarden ever decided to do, like, not a reunion, right, but just kind of like maybe like a tribute show or something to remember Chris Cornell, I felt that Richie Kotzen would be the amazing fit to take Chris Cornell's spot for that one show, or whatever you want to call it.
I never had that thought, and I think that's a great idea. I haven't heard him do a ton of higher register vocals, which is I guess key for a Soundgarden kind of thing. But he looks cool. He can do the frontman thing. He can do the brooding thing. That's a great idea. And like, how into Alice in Chains are you? Because people who like 80s bands, they can go either way.
Yeah. You know what? Last week, like, usually we do. My co-host Nick, who is actually in the hospital right now, we do these top 5 music countdowns. Mm-hmm. And last week it was our top 5 favorite unplugged songs, and my number one was Alice in Chains, Down in a Hole.
That is the best unplugged ever. Yep. I don't think anyone can rightfully ever dispute that.
Absolutely.
And I think that they successfully did the replacement lead singer thing. They sound awesome. They look awesome. And also, I give total credit to Alice in Chains, the way that they broke in the new singer, where at first they were like doing sort of an Alice in Chains plus people, like they were working in some different people paying tribute. I see no reason why Soundgarden couldn't do that kind of thing. Like, you'll never fill Chris Cornell's shoes. It's just impossible. But if they said, hey, we're going to announce a tour and bring out some of our famous friends, and maybe Eddie Vedder's not available. Maybe Jerry Cantrell's not available. But I think that the way that the MC5 did that kind of thing, it's totally feasible, and I think everyone would be psyched to see it.
I agree. The weird thing is, too, like, the music fan to me years ago would probably be maybe, like, angry about it or, discouraged by it. But now I really look at it from where it's a business standpoint, not even like financially, just to make money off of like that dead rock star or dead celebrity, but from the business standpoint that people seem to forget that this is these guys' profession. This is their job, and now their earning is stopped because of this tragedy, and they have the right to go on and still try to make a living for them and their families.
That is an excellent, excellent point. As the Iron Sheik would say, you ask excellent, excellent question, Dan Maroni. Not that you asked a question, but I think that you really hit the nail on the head that the concept of selling out is so outdated and so pointless. And if you're a musician, you got to play music to earn a living. Make your album every year to 2 years. Play your, 50 to 200 gigs in support of that album. Be there for your fans. Give people entertainment. For some people, when they go to your concert, that is their escape. That is the best part of their day or week or month or whatever. So, snobby people be like, oh, well, Chris Cornell was so much better. Well, I'd still like to hear those songs played live and not at a karaoke bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
I mean, one band, I wish now, I guess 3 of them are gone. I would love a Traveling Wilburys like reunion or something. Are you into them at all? And it's cool if you're not.
You know what? Like, I'm not into them, but I get it. Like, I have listened to them like in their heyday, and I got it. But it wasn't like something I would go my way for.
I think one day the Wilburys thing is going to hit you, and you're going to go, oh man, this is the coolest thing ever. Because you get, some people are Dylan fans, some people aren't. Fine. Some people love ELO, some don't. Everyone loves George Harrison. Everyone loves Roy Orbison to an extent, even Danzig, and Danzig doesn't love a lot of stuff. Everybody loves Tom Petty to an extent. And so you get like 5 guys, and Tom Petty was like the baby in that band pretty much. But you get 5 guys that get together and go, hey, we want to play the kind of rock and roll that we grew up on. This will be fun. And it wasn't about hits, yet the songs were still super catchy. And I say there's no reason you can't get like a cool all-star band or collective or something of those guys like just playing what they want and it being fun and that energy coming out.
And that's the good part of the music business today. No matter like how bad it is, we can get things like that today because these musicians can kind of like just guide their own future and do what they want to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with home recording, it's a curse and a blessing because, of course, now it puts great studios and producers and engineers out of business because, hey, I can get that sound quality at home. Why do I need to rent a studio for $1,500 a day and pay for this and pay for that? And granted, your product is probably inferior, but at the same time, you can have an idea and have it completed within the matter of minutes or hours if you try. So that's where, work ethic and all that comes into play. And there's, you go into a bar and you let people talk and you'll hear, music today sucks. It's not as good as it once was. Weezer used to be better. You'll hear all these angry things. I think that there's more great music than ever. It's just the problem now becomes, how do you find it? How do you sift through the filter and find it?
Mm-hmm. It's really true, and it's very overwhelming now because there's so much out there, and I'm sure you get a lot of it presented to you too, with doing interviews and stuff like that. Like my email gets filled up daily with can you review this, interview this, it's just so much, and it's just like, whoa, like slow down, like somebody stop the merry-go-round for a minute, please. Like it's just so much, and it's very overwhelming.
Yeah, there's no shortage because anyone can have any thought and immediately get it out, and that's again an amazing thing and a terrible thing at the same time. And accessibility is there, and there's no right or wrong, but more days, most days I come across, or I shouldn't say come across, I think of things very optimistically because there is so much entertainment. There's more great entertainment than there is time to actually enjoy it. There's more great food and restaurants and concepts than there is time to enjoy, more calories than you have space for. There's more everything, but cutting through the garbage becomes a task because let's say something just gets the praise of somebody you really respect. Sometimes you got to go, oh, no, that's just their friend.
Yeah.
That's just their friend saying it's awesome. And that's a lot different than, oh, they just have a lot of money to get it on the radio. It used to be we had to sit through all the hits.
Yeah.
And, watching 120 minutes on MTV, that's how I found so many of my favorite bands of all time. But now we don't really have that because you can just go into your own world with Pandora or Spotify, what have you. So, same deal with wrestling. Honestly, we could name wrestlers right now that half this fan base would go like, I think I've heard that name, but I've never seen them.
Yeah. It's funny how much the wrestling world and the music world are so much alike.
Those world comedians, podcasts, it's all the same, cut from the same cloth. And horror, it's really just such a huge overlap.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't even think of that, with the comedy, but you're absolutely right.
I mean, they're personas, right? I mean, how many comedians do you meet who are funny off stage or want to be funny off stage? Very few.
Yeah, that's true.
And then how many wrestlers do you meet that when they're not, in the ring, want to be doing stunts or want to be in character or cutting a promo? It's kind of like, oh, you saw me? Cool, thanks.
Right. Can I go hide now?
Yeah, hey, you know it. It's weird that I find the majority of actors, if they're used to playing like villains and evil characters, they tend to be the nicest guys. A couple of podcasts ago, I had William Zabka, Billy Zabka, whatever you want to call him, from Cobra Kai, and just one of the guys, like the quintessential 80s bad guy, like in the late teens, early 20s sect. The nicest, greatest guy. You could talk to him for 3 hours. He likes the same bands we do.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then, meanwhile, when I interviewed last year or so, the bassist of the Eagles, laid back band, not a nice guy.
Whoa.
That was a heartbreaker,
Whoa. Yeah. Thankfully, I haven't had too many bad experiences interview-wise.
Good, good. Isn't it weird that fame doesn't equate to willingness to do interviews? Like somebody like Gene Simmons will do 20 interviews a day, and then other people, other people who are much less successful don't have time, or their publicist is vetting you and go, how many listeners do you have? No, he's not available. But you just told me he's doing press. Change in schedule.
Or how about, how much is this paying?
Oh yeah, Buff Bagwell tried to get me to pay me. He tried to get me to pay him to interview him, and my pitch was, "Hey, I would like to interview you. Just need 15 minutes. I'm going to turn it into 2 or 3 different articles, or maybe a podcast, and I'm going to plug all your upcoming appearances and all that." Okay, man, how much are you going to pay me? Wait, what? I'm promoting you.
You know what's scary? I've actually, since I've stepped back into this whole crazy world of professional wrestling recently, so I've been getting a lot of interview requests, and I have a few of them. They send the pitch to me to interview me, and then they want me to pay them an editing fee. I'm like, and I email them back. I'm like, what? Like, how dare you?
Well,
I'm like, you're
once a
asking me
worker,
to be
always a worker, right?
right? Like, one person emailed me back all nasty. He was like, you didn't have to get nasty about it. I'm like, dude, I've been doing the same thing you're doing for 7 years now, and I've never once asked anybody for money. Like, I am so insulted.
Yeah. I see a name on my wall. I'm looking at an Alice Cooper poster that we have on our wall, and I was thinking about his interview with Mark Maron, where Mark Maron, he was fanboying out, understandably so, because I think Alice Cooper is one of the most underrated performers in the history of performance. You don't have to agree about that, but if you check out his right on,
love it.
Your friend for life.
Seen him the last 3 tours, and going again in this August.
Even if it's the same exact set list, it's still a hell of a show. And Mark Maron was going, did you ever meet the Stones? And Alice Cooper's like, yeah, the nicest guys. You ever meet the Beatles? Yeah, they were the nicest guys. And ultimately, I guess the 3rd or 4th time, he's like, the guys at the top are the nicest because they have nothing to prove. And then you take a step back and go, wait a second. The guys at the top have nothing to prove, so they're not putting up this whole character or front. And so when I think of how Gene Simmons getting to interview him twice in a period of 2 years, and he's great, he's nice, ask me anything, what do you need, do you want a photo? And then there's other people your buddy you were talking about, Ingve, before. That was one of the worst interview experiences I ever had.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. Hey, so what music have you been listening to lately? I don't listen to music. Really?
Oh, okay. I can see where this one's going. Ingve.
Yeah. They say don't meet your heroes. I don't know about that one because I've had a lot of awesome ones and I've had some less than awesome ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
But yeah, the overlaps between music, comedy, wrestling, podcasts, I think that they're all attention span oriented things. Like if you're going to hear somebody do a 7-minute bit, or Joe Rogan do a 3-hour podcast with Everlast, or listen to a whole album, it's all attention span, and that's why a lot of the people from these worlds get along so well, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a real good point. And it's weird, now I think about it, it's just a lot of questions. I feel like I'm in a therapy session now, Darren. I'm like, all my worlds are colliding there in one stroke. Music, wrestling, comedy, podcast, come on.
Could be worse, I could be, you go, so Darren, tell me about your new book. It's out. And your podcast, it's pretty great. How long have you been doing it? 2 months. You ever have one of those interviews before?
Oh yes. Oh, please. It's just like, it's amazing how some people can just do that. Like, give you like these 3-word answers, or then some people can give you like a 30-minute answer for one question.
Did you ever do an interview with Doyle from the Misfits?
No.
He is going out of his way to be difficult and give you one-word answers. He'll be like, so, have you ever played in Cleveland before? And you're expecting, the person to go, oh, no, this is my first time in Cleveland. It's great to be here. Looking forward to playing for the fans. You'll go, Doyle, have you ever played in Cleveland? Yes. Can you tell me where you played in Cleveland? And he does it on purpose. And when you're going through it, it's painful. You feel like, oh, I'm dying. I can't use this interview. And then after it happens, you go, oh, man, no, this guy's great. This is like cross-training practically as an interviewer. Like it's making you go, hey, don't ask have you, kind of, or do you yes or no kind of questions. You have to ask real questions or you're not going to get real answers.
You know what's weird, too? Like, with the whole Doyle thing, I remember it might be like 3-4 years ago, he was doing like a horror convention in South Jersey. And he was like one of the nicest guys. Like there wasn't a big crowd of people around him, but like the ones that were coming up to him, he was so interactive with them and so nice. And I remember because a buddy of mine was at the table next to him, so I was hanging out, BSing and all. I was just watching the whole interaction going on. And I was really impressed. Like it really left an impression on me about him. And then when I've heard like what you're just saying and some other things that have come out in the press lately about him, I'm just like, whoa, what the hell happened to him?
Yeah, I think it's a persona character thing. The way that heels are generally the nicest people when you meet them, and then the baby faces more often than not are kind of prima donnas. Do you agree with that one or?
No, I do.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe you get the venom out of you, so you want to, whatever you were just doing when you were working, you kind of want to do the opposite. Maybe it's some of that, or maybe to be a good heel, you have to, and I say this as a non-wrestler, of course, so, if it's disrespectful, I apologize to anyone I've disrespected, but maybe it takes, being the best babyface to know how to be a good heel, if you get what I'm saying. Like you understand the whole big picture and the psychology. Yeah. Whatever it is, I again thought like when it's going on and you're watching other people interview Doyle, like in other words, they go like, okay, I'll get 5 interviews done in 20 minutes because none of you are going to want to talk to me. You're going through and going, oh, this sucks. Kind of a prick. And then afterwards you go, oh no, it's a character. He's grumpy because you hear interviews with him and he's a vegan and he's in a committed relationship and he's committed to working out and being in amazing shape. The shape he's in at 52 or whatever, most people would kill to be in at 22.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's clearly work ethic and success and knowing what's going on, but of course that's going to get lost on people because they're going to go, he didn't hug me. Maybe he's in a bad mood.
It's probably too like he's trying to put that whole punk rock image over from the heyday of it.
Yeah, it could be, and we were talking about Alice Cooper before. And if you were an ignorant person, you would think like, "Oh man, he's scary," or like, "Oh, he's evil," and they're like, "Nope, he's a Christian who doesn't drink, who plays golf every day, and eats sushi." He's not. It's a character. He can come in and out of the character like any good actor can, and so I guess the older I get, the more intrigued I get by the journeyman villains and the journeyman heels and seeing like they have better stories than anybody.
Right. And there's lots of stories out there to tell, which we got to hear about this book. Like the whole, come on. When I first heard the title, I was taken back. Good advice from professional wrestling, because it made me stop and think. I'm like, is there really good advice that really comes from pro wrestling? And I was like, you know what? There actually is.
Thank you. The title of it is an adaptation from my co-author DX Ferris's prior book, Good Advice from Goodfellas. And I know you can agree that that is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Absolutely.
And I wound up interviewing him, and he made reference to DDP in one of the responses. It's like, wait, you're a wrestling fan? No, what? Really? Okay. And we talked a little more, and I said, why don't you do the same exact book, but with wrestling? Any interest? And he's like, yeah, write it, get it started. So I did, and I think he was expecting me to just drop the ball and not be motivated, because how many people do you meet that go, oh, I'm going to write a book about that. I'm going to write a screenplay. And then, 7 years later, I'm going to write a book about that. I'm going to write a screenplay. I just went really, really heavy into it, and I started that in October, November. Basically said to DX, like, we should get this out the week of WrestleMania. And all the credit goes to him to actually finishing it and making it happen. And pretty much I thought about who are some of the most successful people in the history of the wrestling business, and what are their kind of regular patterns and the things that they did, and what can we learn from them. And it's a collection of some of the greatest people of all time in terms of success and mainstream recognition, and also some of the upstarts, some of the new people on the scene from AEW and MLW.
The first thing that's kind of scary about that whole situation is that you met him from an interview, and then you guys end up writing a book together.
100% correct, yes.
That's freaking awesome. That is.
That's 2019 for you. I don't think Mark Twain was collaborating with any of his readers. I read DX's book, Good Advice from Goodfellas, and went, whoa, this guy is deep. But I think he put out 4 books last year. He put out that one. He put out a book about Slayer. He put out a book out about Donnie Iris and the Cruisers. Wait, is it Donnie Iris? What was Donnie Iris's backing band?
Ooh,
do you know who I'm talking about?
I know the name.
Big hit, Leah or something like that. And I think Metallica covered it the last time they were in Pittsburgh. It's almost like a real life Eddie and the Cruisers kind of thing.
The Cruisers, you're right.
Yeah, he wrote his story with them, and there was a 4th book. I'm blanking on what it is right now, and that's 4 books in a year. Like, how many people write 1 book in their life, and he wrote 4 in a year? And so seeing how prolific this guy is while doing other gigs and whatnot, that's amazing. And then seeing how he's glorifying Goodfellas in a way it should be glorified, it's, I got to work with this guy. And then when he, dropped that DDP quote, yeah. And so when we were halfway through writing the book, DX goes, so are we going to have a foreword? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Well, who's going to write the foreword? What? Can you ask DDP? I went, he's not going to say yes, but what do I have to lose? And I asked him, and he said yes, and here we are.
That's awesome. And that's perfectly fitting, too. That's the person that technically brought you guys together.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't put 2 and 2 together on that end. Yeah, totally. This has turned into a therapy session now on my end.
Now, when you asked DDP, did you tell him, like, what the idea of the book was and all?
Yeah, I told him it. I said there'll be a couple of quotes from you in there. You'll be totally glorified. I don't think I even need to sell him. I think he gave me like an absolutely bro kind of email back. Have you ever met DDP?
That's a good question. I think I might have met him back in the day. As he came through town in Philly.
Yeah.
When he was with WCW. But I've had him on the show a few times. And as a matter of fact, I'll play his bumper for you real quick.
Yo, monkeys, it's me, DDP. And you monkey, you're listening to Totally Driven Radio. And that's not a bad thing. That's
a good thing.
A good thing. Bang!
I knew that was coming. He says that in DDP Yoga a bunch. He's the greatest. And I say that because not only is he successful, not only is he personable, not only does he do everything he says he's going to do and more, but he actually tries to help people and succeeds in helping people. And it's not just Jake the Snake and Scott Hall he's helped out. It used to be like if you bought the yoga okay, he'll kill me if I called it yoga. If you bought the DDP yoga program, he's done that to me before. He's like, "What is it?" Oh, DDP yoga, exactly. If you used to buy the program, he'd call you like a couple of minutes later. Now I think he's too busy to do that. But like if you were one of the people who's clearly like trying to lose 100, 200 pounds, you look at your phone, and you see a 323 number, and you're like, hello? Hey, it's Dallas. Hey, how you doing, man? How's it going? I see you're doing the workouts. Like, what?
Yeah.
Show me one other wrestler or famous person that checks in on you.
Yeah, he truly is an amazing person, and what he's become and what he's made out of himself, it's kind of really mind blowing.
Yeah, he's like the pretty boy Floyd of wrestling and yoga. No, can't even make that joke. Yeah, give it time, and he might become like more famous for DDP yoga than wrestling.
Yeah, it's really scary. Like, it's a good thing to see though too, because especially with professional wrestling, with musicians, usually the life after being a musician is being a musician. They keep going on, and that's their career role. Where professional wrestling, you get to the point where you can't do it no more physically, and you have to hopefully come up with game plan number 2 or 3, and some become authors or now podcast hosts or comedians or actors. But he became this health nut nutritionalist like guru, and is like doing things where he's actually helping people, and it's something you really don't see in many fields of entertainment where this guy's really doing it.
Excellently said. And you can look at Taz's moving on into the radio podcast world. That's pretty inspirational because that's a guy who had, I'm assuming, neck or back issues, and he was an excellent talker, and he's doing awesome. He's built up this organic fan base without the WWE, without coasting on his ECW legacy for the most part. And the number of success stories isn't that high yet. I have a feeling that this current and the future wrestlers, I have a feeling that they're all going to transition into acting and podcasting. Like it's going to be the norm. They're all going to be good on the mic. They're all going to be social media savvy. Like, do you know MJF?
No.
Okay, he's in MLW. He's one of the first signings they announced to AEW. He's a long-term star. Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF. And he's the heeliest of heels ever. He feuds with everybody on social media, and he's fantastic. And you look at a guy like that and you go, oh, he knows what's going on. It's not that he's a failed football player or a failed bodybuilder. He's a guy who loves wrestling, wants to wrestle, amazing talker, and he could transition that into anything he wants to do.
That's interesting. Yeah, like the whole modern era of pro wrestling, it's truly a different breed where the whole new generation is. First, I was just having this conversation earlier. I think it's going to be the future is truly going to be very female dominated in professional wrestling, and where even going back to my days in the 90s, early 2000s. And going back to the 80s and so forth, where your wrestlers were all different styled or body typed, or you could be the self-proclaimed like me, like fat guy, and get away with it and do things, or big or small, it didn't matter what your build was. Where now it's almost kind of cookie cutter the way a lot of the guys look. But it's a whole new style now too. Like a lot of stuff that was done 15, 20 years ago just will not work today. And where today it's a very where the wrestling term work comes in. You have to work. There's a lot of work going on in those rings nowadays to really You can't do a lot of gaga no more. You got to work to get over and keep your job, so to say.
I 98% agree with you. The 2% where I disagree is there's a number of gimmicks that have been working on the indie scene big time, and they're just like, it's almost like an inside joke turned into a career. So, like, if you look at what Joey Janela does, which is, it's a wink. It's 100% a wink. And you look at some of the stuff that Kenny Omega did before he was the Kenny Omega, also a wink. If you look at MLW, you do have AC Romero and Barrington Hughes. I think they say they're both like 400 or 500-pound guys, whatever it is. You know, they don't have the most versatile moveset, but it's like they're building up an attraction, an old school style. Like, oh, I want to see what does the big guy do, and it then becomes an amazing feat that the person body slammed or drop kicked the big guy. So it's in some ways niche oriented, almost like indie rock or punk rock. You know, wrestling fans can now be super snobby the way that Sonic Youth fans were in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, that's a good reference there.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You used to have to justify why you liked bands, and you had their patches or their pins, and go, no, seriously, they're good. And now I think that's kind of gone because everyone's just allowed to like their niche. But you're going to have people who snobbily call WWE the E. Have you heard that before? The E?
No, not at all. No.
I've heard indie wrestlers. Oh, he's working at the E now. Like, come on, stop it. You
so
can't.
They don't call it the Fed no more. Now it's the E.
I'm working in New York, bro. Oh, come on. Cut it out. I think it's a beautiful time to be a wrestling fan because let's say you only like the WWE style, well, then you can watch that. Let's say you're nostalgic for the old-time stuff. So much of that is on the WWE Network. Plus, there's that great Viceland series. Plus, Cornette's got his podcast. And Vince Russo's got his podcast. And Lawler has his podcast. And, you know, there's people like Evan Ginsberg out there. He did that 350 Days documentary. He is associate producer of The Wrestler. Do you know Evan?
I do not.
He'd be perfect for your show. Great guy. Great New York guy. Associate producer of The Wrestler. He helped produce that 350 Days documentary with Billy Graham and whatnot.
I gotta see that.
Yeah, you'll love it. But like, if you want the old stuff, just watch the old stuff. You want the new stuff, yeah. You want to see the Japan stuff, it's on demand. You want to see the Ring of Honor, it's on demand. You want to watch all of it, you want to watch MLW, AEW. You could watch 50 hours of new wrestling a week if you wanted to put that much of your life into it. Personally, I can barely get through Raw and SmackDown. That's too much. Too much of the E, as they call it, for me.
Yeah, too much E might not be too good for you.
Exactly, but you know, always glad to connect with another person that gets the importance of not just wrestling but also music and comedy.
Absolutely. You know, that's like wrestling. I've stayed away from for like the last 16 years, 17 years. But I mean, music has always been in the forefront with me, and comedy as well. Like I'm going to a comedy show in 2 weeks. I'm going to music concerts constantly. Like that's all my loves. It's so yeah. And now I'm going to wrestling again. So yeah.
What's the next comedy show and the next concert for you?
Okay, so you ready for this one? It's a comedy show. 2 weeks from tonight, I'm going to. One of my other loves growing up, believe it or not, was soap operas and General Hospital. And so a couple of the stars from General Hospital are going to be here in Philly doing a benefit comedy show. So I'll be going to that in 2 weeks from tonight. And when is the next concert I'm going to? That's a good question. I want to see friends of mine play in 2 weeks. Rat Rod. Who else? I got tickets to see Kiefer Sutherland coming up.
Oh yeah,
in the summer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what we were talking about before. There's an infinite number of great live shows, and new releases and reissues of classic albums, there's no shortage. Just the issue is time. You know, if you want to spend all your time on that and then none of your time excelling in your career or having a good relationship with your partner or your kids or your family, that's on you. You do what you want. But it's such a great time to be a fan of entertainment, and it's such a great time for whatever your interest is. You could find books or podcasts on it like never before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, real quick, because my next guest is holding. I'm going to throw one of these quotes out here that I marked off. Let me pick one. I had marked off. Let me see. I think this is...
You're not calling me a mark, right?
No. No. Okay, here's one of the ones that I marked off. I said, this one's by Mark Henry. You can't tell people what to do if you're a failure. You have to be responsible, and you've got to lead by example.
Yeah, he said that to me when I interviewed him by phone about 6 months ago. WWE does not give me access to talent or performer interviews, but Mark was doing a thing for a Facebook series, and I went around and spoke to his entertainment publicist, and they granted me. And man, what a nice, accomplished guy who had a longer career than almost anybody, who was an accomplished athlete before the WWE, and he wants to be an actor. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to cross over into the acting world.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. He's somebody. I mean, he was on the scene. It's probably about 20 years now, and I didn't think he would last as long as he did. And he got by being able to do that different character and get himself over. And many applause to him. And I love the advice he put into your book.
Absolutely, man. I hope to get to talk to him about other stuff next time. But great to have him in the book, and there's plenty more good stuff where that came from.
Absolutely. So, Darren, where should we send everybody to get the book and find out more about you and the podcast and everything else?
The book is on Amazon as an ebook and a paperback. If you just look for Darren Paltrowitz, think of Gwyneth Paltrow, but the "it's" at the end. Darren Paltrowitz, and the podcast is the Paltrocast with Darren Paltrowitz. New episode every other Wednesday. Just put my damn name online, and you'll find me.
There you go. He's at Paltrowitz.
At Paltrowitz. Thank you so much for having me, man. Love the show.
Absolutely.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Darren. You too, man. It was great connecting with you through all this stuff.
Likewise.
Take care, man.
You too.
Bye. All right, there he goes, Mr. Darren Paltrowitz. Check him out. He's got his website, paltrowitz.com. Look for the book on Amazon. Good advice from professional wrestling. And, social media, at Paltrowitz. Check him out.